I even had that debate with Lawrence Krauss on a debate that we had together, and he said the same thing, which is kind of surprising for one of the world's most self-proclaimed militant atheist, he and Dawkins, and he was like the most simple kind of argument for why he doesn't believe in God, because he wasn't revealed to me. And I said, look, you bow down to your different idols. He has a idolatry of the Nobel Prize himself.
Nice.
So anyway, I think you're right.
How did he take that?
I think he has a tendency to kind of move on to topics when he's not particularly comfortable. I mean, I haven't been
Fair
impressed
enough.
with. I've been on his show, and we do tend to devolve into talking about like non-scientific things, but we do talk about mostly what I do as an experimental physicist.
But you know what's really interesting is there's a very parallel debate that I'm aware of that's concerning the Medal of Honor in military institutions, because it's a very destructive force. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but who is one of the few people, maybe the only person who lived through the Iraq conflict and got a Medal of Honor. And he did a really wonderful podcast with Jocko the other day. And he was they were discussing the same issue that we talk about with the Nobel Prize with respect to the Medal of Honor, and how it essentially deifies somebody when in reality it's a team effort. No soldiers out there on the battlefield doing everything. And there's this cultural, social need to deify people, though, to focus it on one individual so that we can use them almost and use them as that torch to walk towards. And if only this, and it's kind of sad, because for the people themselves, there's often this, with Nobel Prize winners, they often devolve into all kinds of crazy stuff afterwards. This is like a well-known phenomenon. Unfortunately, it happens with the Medal of Honor too. So I think there is some sort of great disservice we do by not finding a way to honor the team and the team effort, because science is ultimate. Like Einstein had so many amazing collaborators. From what I understand, he wasn't even that great of a mathematician, but he made friends with one, right? Who he was able to communicate his ideas to and ultimately present it in a format that was acceptable to the community.
And this is something we come across a lot too, because one of the points of the project is not to just talk to people who are inside of the academy and are, on the Nobel Prize track or whatever, but also to talk to people that are working outside of the academy who might have criticisms, who might have objections to the mainstream theories. And this is something that we come across all the time, which is like, if you can find a way to collaborate, and if you can find a way to communicate your ideas to people who are interested in developing them with you, then you won't remain in this oppositional phase for forever, because there's definitely people inside of the academy that criticize the mainstream ideas. Like we recorded 2 conversations on the same subject back to back. One of which was with Carver Mead, who's a Caltech electrical engineer. He did a lot of work in the semiconductor industry, and he wrote a book called Collective Electrodynamics. And his point is that light is not what we think it is, in terms of this mysterious photon that gets just shot into space. He's like, look, if you look at what Feynman was saying, there's a handshake between atoms. And so light is the interconnection between atoms, and you can interpret the violation of Bell's inequality through that lens, and you get a very, very, very different interpretation of quantum mechanics. And he has a really interesting point. Like I think that if you shift where you're standing, you can diffuse a lot of the spookiness of quantum mechanics. And then the other conversation we had was with somebody who's outside of the academy who's saying the same thing. And it's like, you guys should work together.
Yeah. But they don't, they all have their kind of fiefdoms that they want to maintain. I encounter that a lot. It's like, I don't want to listen to you, because if I listen to you, then I'll have to, really potentially upend my own research, and it could change things. I'm like, you're supposed to be doing this, for a pursuit of truth, right? It's frustrating. Yeah, the kind of, and the worst thing is when you have people like, even my friends, like, I'm very close with Eric Weinstein, and I'm close to Sabina Hassenfelder and Stephen Wolfram and all these incredible theorists. And they all have different theories of the, grand unification and theories of everything, blah, blah, blah. and they don't read each other's work, except Eric. Eric Reed does have a very commanding knowledge of other people's research, but the rest will be like, my research is correct. So, okay, so I don't need to listen to a completely orthogonal pursuit because I'm correct. It's strange. It's a very strange phenomenon. Like, be like, oh, a reporter's not going to read another reporter's research because she reported on the same story as the other one. It's baffling to me. But do
you have a sense for how we can start to reward team playing behavior?
Yeah, Michael. I was just going to say, I think we don't teach the kind of soft skills that you guys have developed. Look, you guys are very good at conversation. You guys are very good at distilling topics down to a simple, succinct question. And you're not just only interviewing, you're also sharing your own journeys and your own personal experience, not your own personal data, but your own personal facts, right? Or objective facts that you have cultivated, right? So we don't teach that to our students. We just don't. And maybe it's because we don't have enough time. Maybe if we, added on an extra year, or as I think, we should go to school year round. I don't know why, like, a college student or my kids don't go to school year round. Other countries do. And it's not like, oh, well, and they've shown actually the biggest discrepancies between, say, poor kids and rich kids. And sometimes they use poor as a synonym, which I don't prefer for African Americans. And are underrepresented communities. But the biggest difference is that richer children, I'm talking about, kids, school age kids like my kids, they go to school 9 months, and then they have summer enrichment programs. It could be a camp. They found it doesn't matter what they do. They don't have to go to like coding camp for the summer. They can go and like play in a water park. But if they miss out on that interaction, children from lower income backgrounds do not do as well as kids from wealthier backgrounds. And it's a shame, right? Because the student, like, why does I don't get 3 months off over the summer? Why does an elementary school teacher get paid for a full year and then he or she has off for 3 months? They should be in school year round, and that would do wonders for our school system and our education. But if that's good for my school age kids, all the more so for my college age kids. I mean, you're supposed to be a professional. When you're in college, you're gearing up to have a professional career, whatever it is. So maybe if we added an extra quarter per year, you're talking, you're talking about a full school year, more than a full school year, that we could then teach the skills that you guys have had to study on your own. And if you were in the academy, if you were faculty, at least at the R1 type schools where I talk to people and I say, well, don't you feel like you have an obligation to share your work with the public? I mean, you guys were talking like it is optional. I mean, no one's forcing me to do it, but I feel there's a moral obligation that I have. I'm paid by the public to teach, and communicate discoveries that they paid for. I mean, how dare I keep it to myself, right? Just say, oh, well, I'm not good at it. Oh, okay. So I guess you were born knowing, quantum electrodynamics, like you guys are talking about. No, you weren't born at it. You worked at it because you prioritized it and you thought it was important. Why don't you think it's important to communicate to the public? I don't know.